Madronius, Excellency, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today. Secretary Clinton said democracies flourish when they are supported by other democracies, and I wish I'd said that, because I think coming from an organisation that represents 27 country communities of democracies, of course the European Union, I think we bear witness to that every single day. I want to commend again the vision of Madeleine Albright and Bronislaw Geremik, who brought this community together, brought it to life over 10 years ago, and particularly brought to life the idea that democratic values are universal and that this could be a global community. So I think we come together to learn and to share. No democracy anywhere in the world is perfect, and none is yet complete. Every national democracy is on a journey. It's something that's continuing to evolve. And in Europe and the European Union, we recognise that that journey is best done when it is shared. Democracy is the founding value of this union. It's, if you like, hardwired into everything that we do. And in 1993 in Copenhagen, we said that very clearly, that no country could join the EU unless, in fact, it were a democracy. We've seen the process of enlargement with 10 former dictatorships joining between 2004 and 2007. I think it's been the European Union's most successful democracy support strategy, and one which I have supported all of my professional life. And what we believe for ourselves, we promote beyond our own borders. The Treaty of Lisbon that Adronius mentioned is very clear. Let me just quote from it. The Union's actions on the international scene should be guided by the principles which have inspired its own creation and which it seeks to advance in the wider world. Democracy, the rule of law, the universality and divisibility of human rights and fundamental freedoms, and respect for human dignity. These beliefs go further. First, we believe that while democracy is a set of shared values and principles, it doesn't have an established model. It will always adapt locally, at its own pace and in its own style. Above everything, democracy has to be wanted and owned locally. It cannot be imposed. Secondly, we believe it's very hard to have democracy without development or development without democracy. I think the evidence for that is very clear. The two are intertwined and mutually reinforcing. Democracy brings economic benefit. It attracts investment. It creates jobs. And economic certainty gives the conditions for people to engage in and support democracy. And third, we believe that democracy is much more than voting governments in or out. It's what I call deep democracy, and it brings the dividend and the safe knowledge that those elections, those opportunities to vote governments in and out, are part of a wider and established system of true democratic institutions, a civil service, an independent judiciary, a police force, and true democratic culture seen in lively and responsible media, civil society, and perhaps in a way that society cares for the most vulnerable people within it. Our European beliefs about democracy naturally become our European actions in how we support it everywhere in the world. We build in clauses into our discussions and dialogues, commitments into those processes of political dialogue with all of the countries with whom we interact. And when I visit countries across the world, I've seen how we're really trying to actively support democracy. And as has already been said, nowhere than in our neighbourhood is that most important. When I took over this position, I said that Europe should be judged by its success in our neighbourhood. I believed that 10 years ago, I believed that a year ago, and I certainly believe it now. So the work that we do in our neighbourhood and across the world matters hugely in terms of supporting and promoting the values we hold. So the work we're doing now on election laws in Moldova, the strengthening of the party political system in Tajikistan, including women in the political process in Azerbaijan and in Ghana, involving young people in Kyrgyzstan or indigenous people in Bolivia, the promotion of a free press now in Côte d'Ivoire, building trust in the electoral process in Bangladesh and in the Philippines, training policemen and women, judges, prison officers, customs officers in 20 civilian EU security missions around the world, and observing and making recommendations on elections all over the world. I mentioned just a few of the 1,000 or so projects that have been funded with €500 million over the last 10 years. More than that, when we see that it's shared values, when the European Union sees that those democratic values are being abused, we want to speak out and be very direct. So this week, you will see the statements that have been made by the European Union endorsing the work of the International Criminal Court in Libya after it issued arrest warrants for Muammar Gaddafi, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi and Abdullah al-Sanusi, and supporting the High Court of the Democratic Republic of Congo to investigate the death of the human rights campaigner Floribert Chebeya. And beyond those words are economic sanctions in countries like Zimbabwe and Burma, most recently, of course, Libya and Syria and Belarus. We do this because we believe that humankind's deepest instincts want dignity and self-determination. What has become known as the Arab Spring again shows us the universality of democracy and democratic principles and of people's aspirations to determine their own lives. In North Africa and the Middle East in these last few months, we've seen the sense and the results of that deep-felt view of injustice and disempowerment and a powerful plea for dignity, for rights, for opportunity. In my view, the loudest and most eloquent voices have been those of women and young people. Our task in the European Union, both in North Africa and around the world, is to give what support we can to this democratic aspiration. That's why I've proposed a new, ambitious European neighbourhood policy that builds on the existing partnerships with our 16 partner countries, both to the east and to the south, and has democracy and prosperity at its heart. In recognition of that partnership, it's mutually accountable. Both parties have to keep promises that we make. In recognition of conditionality, we offer more support in response to more reform. And in recognition of individuality, we respond to each country's own particular circumstances and aspirations. And we know that we can always do more to deepen and improve that support. We do this in the framework of the 27 countries coming together in the European Union's Council of Ministers and the conclusions that we adopt together, not least those we adopted in November 2009. And those represented a big strategic step designed to bring together all of our democracy work and ensure that it, like democracy itself, you might think, is a truly dynamic process based on first-hand experience. It's why I put my full support around the proposals put forward by Poland, by Radek Sikorski, for a European Endowment for Democracy, something flexible, non-bureaucratic, free of the imprint of government and free of EU bodies' imprint too, which can help countries find their democratic voice. For example, can it help to make sure young people can talk to each other in what we now know is called cyberspace, to reflect on the use of social media, so important in the countries that we're describing of our neighbourhood, and advancing those democratic dialogues through democratic channels. So in all this, I think the European Union and the community of democracies have similar goals. And I encourage the community in the work it's doing to reform and reinvigorate its various working groups. And I welcome more dialogue with it and within it. Let me end where I began, with what I call the universality of democracy. It's not a European Union project. It's not a United States of America project. It's a global aspiration, as real in Africa and Asia as in South America, the Caribbean and the Pacific. And that aspiration means that we in the European Union welcome the fact that the chairmanship of the community will now move out of Europe, first to Asia, to Mongolia, and then to Latin America and El Salvador. This is a democratic journey in which we're all engaged everywhere in the world. The journey is the same goals the world over and faces the same challenges. But the European Union will play its part. What we hold dearest at home, we want to support abroad. Such is the universality of democracy. Thank you.